Gentleman from Florida is recognized for 5 minutes.
We are here at the hearing on the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, and the essential ingredient we seem to be missing is the Manhattan District Attorney, which I guess, Mr. Roy, would be a lot like going to the Salt Lick Barbecue and not getting the moist brisket. Now, to Mr. Jordan's credit, great credit, he sent a letter to Mr. Bragg on May 31st inviting him to come participate, and we got sort of a nasty gram back from Mr. from Mr. Bragg on June 7th. Mr. Chairman, I seek unanimous consent to enter into the record the June 7th response from AG Bragg.
Without objection.
And, I'm sorry, DA Bragg. And in this letter, I'm going to quote from it, Ms. Foley. Bragg says, "This office is committed to voluntary cooperation." Do you believe that?
No.
The letter continues, "That cooperation includes making the district attorney available to provide testimony on behalf of the office at an agreed upon date." Do you believe that?
I'll believe it when I see it.
It goes on to say that they're evaluating the propriety of allowing an assistant district attorney to testify publicly about the matter. Now, that assistant district attorney is the one who downstreamed from DOJ, right? So you think they're going to provide Mr. Colangelo here to answer our questions?
I would not expect Mr. Colangelo to show up.
And do you base that opinion on the lawsuit that Alvin Bragg filed against Jim Jordan in his official capacity in the Committee on the Judiciary?
I saw some of that, yeah. I mean, look, you have a legitimate legislative purpose to be inquiring as to what you're doing, so they have no leg to stand on.
But they're not going to come because we ask. And they're not going to come because they say so. And we learned that by observing our dear friends at the Oversight Committee. Because this will surprise a lot of Americans. After hearing the enthusiasm around oversight of the Biden crime family, we never sent a subpoena to Hunter Biden to give live testimony before Congress. Let that sink in. The Republican House majority has never subpoenaed Hunter Biden for live testimony in public. We've never done it. And I worry that, we're going about the same kind of process here, and we may end up there in July, right after sentencing, with an empty Alvin Bragg nameplate and an empty Matthew Colangelo nameplate. And then we'll start the process again on letters and subpoenas and accommodation, and I've just grown tired of it. And I think you're right, Ms. Foley, that this is all professional wrestling. There's no real effort to bring these people to bear. So,
will the gentleman yield for a
no,
question?
one second, I got a motion. Mr. Chairman, I move under Committee Rule 4 and Clause 2M of House Rule 11 to require the attendance and testimony of Alvin Bragg and Matthew Colangelo on July 12th to discuss their involvement in the Trump prosecution, including their office's coordination with the Department of Justice.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman, ranking members recognized.
It's a little absurd because Mr. Bragg and Mr. Colangelo have already agreed to appear before the committee on July 12th. We have a letter to that effect, so there's no point requiring them to do what they've already said they're going to do. The committee asked them to appear. They asked them to appear today. They made the point that or Mr. Bragg, I should say, made the point that he didn't think he should appear before the sentencing on July 11th, but he'd be available thereafter, and he's agreed to come on July 12th.
Mr. Chairman, this debate's out of order.
You made a motion. It's not out of order.
No, you have to seek recognition pursuant to debate on the motion. You can't just inject.
I recognize you.
I'm still on my time. I'm still controlling 2 additional minutes of time.
You'll get your time, man.
I have a letter here. No, my point is simple. The committee requested them to appear, Mr. Bragg and Mr. Colangelo. They've agreed to appear. They plan to appear on July 12th. I don't know what this debate is about. I yield back. Oh, and I'd like unanimous consent, Mr. Chairman. Yes, unanimous consent to introduce into the record a report from Fox News headlined.
Without objection.
Object pending consideration of my motion.
Hang on, I want to deal with.
Let me finish.
I want to deal with Mr. Gates' motion. Then we'll take your unanimous consent. Mr. Bragg and Mr. Colangelo have agreed to come on the 12th. If they don't show up on the 12th, they will be subpoenaed. So I would ask the gentleman if he could withdraw the motion. They're coming. We worked hard over the weekend to make sure they're coming. And if they change their mind, they will get a subpoena from the committee requiring them, compelling them to be here. And then if they choose to go to court on that, I think we'll beat them in court like we did the first time when we got Mr. Pomerantz to come testify in front of the, come be deposed in front of the committee.
Time then becomes determinative. The problem is, if we're going to bring these people in, let's go. I've made a motion to subpoena these people now, pursuant to the rules, and I want to vote on my motion, or I want someone to move to table it.
You made the motion to subpoena them for the 12th?
I moved under Committee Rule 4, Clause 2M of House Rule 11,
I
to
moved to
require the
table.
attendance.
I move to table the,
That's fine.
I
let's take a
second
vote.
that.
It's not debatable.
Gentleman's made a motion. The motion to table is not debatable. Those in favor of
Thank you kindly, Mr. Speaker. Our
recess.
colleagues invite us today to become the first Congress in the history of the United States to hold someone in contempt for complying with our demands. And their target is the Attorney General of the United States. Attorney General Garland gave us the special counsel's report on President Biden in full. He made the special counsel available to us in committee for hours of testimony where he answered all our questions, and he provided the full transcript of the president's voluntary 5-hour interview with the special counsel, all 250 pages of it. The whole world can read President Biden's interview and his answers unedited. But that's apparently not enough. Now they want to hold the Attorney General in contempt for not turning over the audio tape of the interview that we have the verbatim transcript of. And why is that important? Well, in case you've lost the thread of this madcap wild goose chase, America, remember this is an impeachment investigation. Do they think that the holy grail of the 118th Congress, evidence of a presidential high crime and misdemeanor, is lurking in the pauses or the background throat clearings and sneezes on the audio tape? Well, of course not. They know there's no high crime or misdemeanor to be found because they've spent the last 17 months and millions of our taxpayer dollars looking for it, and it simply does not exist. They literally don't even know what they're looking for anymore. So why do they want it? Well, they're hoping that in the 5 hours of President Biden's testimony, they can find a mispronounced word or phrase or a brief stammer, which they can then turn into an embarrassing political TV attack ad. Get it, America? That's what this is all about. And holding the Attorney General of the United States in contempt is one more useful distraction from the complete and devastating implosion of the Biden impeachment probe, which of course was the #1 priority of these talented leaders. Remember, they promised to reveal the greatest presidential high crime and misdemeanor in American history, an act of treachery and deceit that dwarfs even the incitement of a violent mob insurrection and an attempted political coup that took place right here against our Constitution, our Congress, our Vice President in this chamber. But after their truly prodigious investigation, punctuated, admittedly, by some unfortunate mishaps like Chinese spies, fake evidence, pornographic displays in committee, and their own witnesses testifying that there were no grounds for presidential impeachment, they have nothing to show for their arduous work other than one more debunked Russian disinformation operation and one more indicted GOP informant and star witness. Rather than admit defeat in this bumbling operation and look for some other way to actually aid the public good, they've decided to flail about in mock outrage against a series of phantom tyrants in the hopes of distracting everyone from this epic flop. Their first distraction was to impeach Secretary Ali Mayorkas as a paltry consolation prize, but that pathetic decoy action blew up in their hands. Then the plan was to skip the mundane work of casting votes and actually doing committee business to travel on a collective spiritual pilgrimage on Amtrak to New York City to attend the criminal trial of an unmentionable American felon, one of 19 million in the country. But that strange journey to Mecca also blew up in their faces when this mystery political false prophet was convicted unanimously by a jury of his peers on dozens of felony criminal counts in a fair American trial. They tried to salvage the credibility of this bizarre expedition by blaming the American justice system for being weaponized against Republicans. But this political extremism quickly melted away when the son of President Biden, the original target of their wrath, was also prosecuted and convicted, like another disarmed felon whose name may now not be spoken on the floor, apparently, by a unanimous jury of his peers on all counts against him. And that trial, unlike the trial whose very existence must be sent down the Orwellian memory hole to save someone hurt feelings, was actually tried in the federal system. So what's left to do now? Well, let's hold the Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland, in contempt, of course. This will be sure to placate an unrepentant and anonymous convicted felon from New York and distract everybody else for a day or two. I confess it's a bit rich, Mr. Speaker, to be asked to hold the Attorney General of the United States in contempt of Congress for overwhelmingly complying with the committee's demands by members who voted against contempt citations for Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, two persons subpoenaed by the January 6th Select Committee who never spent a single minute. Could I have one more?
The gentleman's time has expired.
I grant the gentleman an additional minute.
Bannon and Navarro never spent a minute with the January 6th committee, never turned over a single document to our committee. These people had 0% compliance with Congress. They demonstrated true contempt, which is why they've been sentenced to jail. But Chairman Comer, in his wisdom, would hold the Attorney General of the United States of America in contempt for what I think is 100% compliance, but in any event is something like 98 or 99% compliance. If you think a federal official is not rendered proper compliance, you take them to court, you don't hold them in contempt, and it's rich beyond measure, like a billionaire rich, to be asked to hold the Attorney General in contempt by people who themselves received subpoenas to testify before the January 6th committee who never rendered a single document nor a single minute of testimony to the January 6th committee. I urge Congress to reject this absurd motion, and I'm happy to yield back to the chairman.